Hey everyone, excited to be diving into week 3 here with you all as we're looking at some of the important legislation that has created for the establishment of agricultural education as we know it today here in 2022. Now, we spent a lot of time this week in our readings learning a little bit about land grant universities and how those came to be, and also with the various legislations that have supported the foundation of land grant universities. And I actually went ahead and found a source that talks a little bit about how those land grant universities came to be, and actually looks at it from the perspective of how those pieces of land were actually obtained from indigenous areas. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to kind of walk through this website. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert on this topic by any means. In fact, I didn't know very much about how land grant universities even came to be prior to this week's reading and learning about the different pieces of legislation. But this website I thought was very intriguing because it talks a little bit about the history behind the creation of these universities and how the land was acquired for these land grant universities. And the website actually takes a look and kind of places all of these land grant universities and refers to them as land grab universities because some of the land at times was taken rather forcefully from indigenous and tribal communities. And I want to share a couple of statistics here right at the beginning of the page that just jump out at me. So this first one is nearly 11 million acres of indigenous land, approximately 250 tribal nations, over 160 violence-backed treaties and land seizures, 52 universities. Discover the bloody history behind land grant universities. This website contains some other statistics and information along with where these institutions were located, traceable to the Morrill Act, which we talked about this week, that first Morrill Act in 1862, looking at some of the different areas or lands that were supplied by the grants from tribal nations through various treaties or seizures that were appropriated. So we can see from this map, a lot of this occurred in the western area of the United States. And 11 million acres of those indigenous lands were sold to raise Morrill Act endowments. Now, again, I don't claim to be an expert on any of this information by any means, but I thought this website, while there may definitely be some bias and some areas of the website that might not necessarily be the most accurate or maybe dramatized a little bit potentially, it still is very eye-opening to see what the world was like in the 1800s versus how it is now here in 2022. And maybe looking at this indigenous land and what the land was being used for by the original tribes and communities that were owning the land, and how that evolved into post-secondary institutions within agriculture and within career technical education. So if you scroll down the website, you can see here 4% of acquired indigenous lands are granted to universities through seizure, which is like forcefully giving up. The other 96% was through unratified treaty or treaty. Again, very passionate, emotional discussion on this website. So again, some of this information might not necessarily be the most factual or might have some opinion or sway into it, as this could be a very heated topic for discussion. But I just thought there were some interesting statistics and information here that I am looking forward to continuing to unpack myself this evening and moving forward in the future. But again, you can customize it to meet the specific state. So the automatic one in here is New York. I looked at Minnesota a little while ago because that's where I'm from. I've peeked at Florida as well. Pretty interesting to see the diversity there. Obviously, Minnesota is more central in the United States than New York or Florida. So looking at those statistics and differences was pretty interesting as well. Then we get into some more information about our sources, I guess you could say, primary sources from different tribes and organizations that were affected. And if you go down here, they have a lot of different sources and other things you can take a look at as well. From what I've gathered, this website seemed to be compiling of a variety of different primary sources and data pieces and statistics, and kind of wrapping it into one giant website that shares a lot of key information about these land grab universities and the impact that they've had on the American education system, and how the land wasn't necessarily granted per se, but different states had the opportunity to take land and use that for the development of their institutions. So while it was very nice and fun to read about land grant universities and how this all began at a post-secondary level and also on a secondary level, reading this tonight actually kind of opened my eyes to thinking about the impact that this could have had on the inhabitants of the land before colleges were kind of dotting the landscape with career technical education. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you find this website to be interesting. I'll go ahead and link it in our discussion thread here this week. And I look really forward to looking at your guys' resources as well. So take care and have a great rest of your week.